we've got Bridget Phillipson now. Bridget is the Shadow Secretary of State for Education. Bridget, good morning to you. I'm looking at a story in the Mirror today which has got Jonathan Ashworth, in a bingo hall. And basically, he's saying, and it was a message he was trying to get across on our programme yesterday, Bridget, that the Conservatives are gambling with your pensions. What's your worry?
I'm really concerned that in the last budget they opened up a £46 billion black hole when they set out what they are talking about as their long-term plan to abolish national insurance contributions. Now, we all know that national insurance contributions are an important part of how people's state pension is calculated, and I think pensioners have every right, and pensioners into the future should be really concerned about what the Conservatives have got in store. This is an unfunded commitment. They've had more than 50 days now since they announced this to set out their plan for how they're going to pay for it, and they have failed to do so. And I think it's just reckless and cavalier, and is the very worst of what we saw under Liz Truss when she was Prime Minister.
I'm curious about how the Labour Party intends to honour the triple lock on pensions. This is something we tried to talk about with Jonathan as well yesterday. There's lots of concerns, including from Conservatives who originally, introduced this legislation, that this is no longer going to be sustainable. And even the Institute for Fiscal Studies have said, if you do continue with the triple lock, you're just going to have to end up eventually increasing the age at which people are able to retire, because it's just not affordable at the levels that we're talking about today. So how will you address this issue? Will you just increase pensioners' age?
I think it's really important that pensioners have got dignity and a good standard of living when they're in retirement. And that was the record of the last Labour government in terms of lifting pensioners out of poverty and making sure that they had not just enough to get by, but actually to enjoy a much better quality of living.
How are you going to sustain the triple lock?
We are clear that we would... Absolutely. We are clear that we will maintain the triple lock. I mean, that is important for workers who are coming through and who will, have a good pension into retirement, as well as for today's pensioners too. It's within the government's baseline, so they have already accounted for this within their plans. We intend to maintain it. We think it's important that pensioners have got that security, that dignity and that knowledge that they don't have to worry about the future, because, of course, pensioners don't have the ability to take on more hours, and we know that pensioners are often people who are particularly exposed to issues like cost of living pressures around gas and electricity bills. I've spoken to lots of people over the years as a Member of Parliament in my community where, because pensioners might have ill health or will be spending more time at home, they're often spending more of their income on things like gas and electricity, and that's why it's so important that they have that certainty, that security of knowing that the pension will be maintained at a good level.
Yeah, and you want national insurance maintained as well. And I'm just interested, Bridget, does national insurance, is it actually ring-fenced for things like pension? The way people pay road tax and they think it goes to the roads and it doesn't. But is the situation any different with national insurance?
I mean, that's not quite how it works, but what national insurance does count towards is the years and the contributions that you make count towards the pension that you will then receive in retirement. So what the government have set out in these reckless and crazy plans to just abolish national insurance, they've answered no questions as to what that would mean in terms of people's contributions, what that means for the state pension, or frankly how they're going to fund it. This is £46 billion that we're talking about. Are they going to ask for pensioners to pay more in taxation, for example? We just don't know, because they won't answer these questions. And there is absolutely no way that I would be allowed to come on your programme this morning setting out such a big plan unless I was clear about how we were going to pay for it and how we were going to fund it. And that's the difference between us and the Conservatives. We're clear that fiscal responsibility, being serious about taxpayers' money, is right at the heart of everything that we'll do. And we saw what the Conservatives did under Liz Truss, £45 billion bombshell there, and now we've got £46 billion in terms of national insurance abolition. It's absolutely crazy.
I want to talk to you about single-sex spaces. There's been lots of discussion about it over the last 24 hours with the NHS constitution being updated yesterday. We've got Kemi Badenoch, the Women's and Equalities Minister, on in a few minutes, and she's talking about this as well. Where does Labour sit in all of this? Because, of course, Rosie Duffield, your female colleague in the Commons for the Labour Party, was criticised by your boss for saying that only women had a cervix.
I believe that single-sex spaces are important. I believe they're incredibly important in the context of the care that women will receive in hospital when you can be very vulnerable and you want to make sure that people have got safety and privacy and dignity. The sad reality is that under the Conservatives, actually, we've seen a big explosion in the number of mixed-sex provision
but
within
I'm asking
NHS
you about
hospitals.
Keir
and real
Starmer's
growth
views.
in
Do you
that.
condemn him for what he said to Rosie Duffield about, he believed that she was wrong when she said only women had a cervix?
I'm clear about what biological sex is. I'm a woman. I'm speaking to you this morning. I'm clear what
So
being
Keir
a woman
Starmer was wrong
means
to say
and what
that.
that's about. But alongside that, I think we need to make sure that when we're using language and seeking to treat one another with respect. And sadly, much of the discussion will often drift into a rather difficult and toxic place when I think what all of us want to do is make sure that we do respect and maintain single-sex spaces. I think that's really important. But I also think we need to show some compassion and understanding and respect of people, trans people, and make sure they've got the support that they need to. I don't think it is one or the other. I think we can maintain single-sex spaces, for example, in hospitals, and alongside that, making sure that all patients have the right level of support that they need. The reality is, under the Conservatives, that isn't happening. So what I'd say to Kemi Badenoch is, it's all very good and well talking about the importance of single-sex wards within the NHS, but it's her government that has been responsible for a big growth in the number of mixed-sex wards that mean that women often don't have that privacy that they would like and expect when they're in a hospital.
Bridget Phillipson, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Bridget Phillipson is the Shadow Secretary of State for Education. Thank you very much indeed.